I'm Vic from Unsheathed Sword Reviews, and today we're going to review the Mainz style Gladius, the Augustus from Albion Swords.
So, a disclaimer, we here at Unsheathed Sword Reviews are not sword experts. We are rather sword enthusiasts. And the point of this review is to give you the opportunity to get some information about a sword that you probably haven't had the chance to handle, because we realize it's a pretty substantial outlay of cash, and so we want you to be able to make an informed decision as much as you can given information. So that's the plan.
Yeah, hopefully we can help you make a good buying decision. And what we have here is a Roman Gladius.
That's true. What kind of Roman Gladius?
Well, funny you should ask, because most people might not know. There's several different types of Roman gladi. Plural for gladius is gladi. Fun fact. And so there's actually 4 different types. There's the Mainz pattern, which I have here. There's the Fulham pattern, which is kind of a offshoot of the Mainz. There's the Pommel, and then before that there is the Gladius Espanensis. But of the 3 Roman variants, you have the Mainz, the Fulham, and the Pommel. And Albion makes 2 versions of each of those. And picking which one you're going to get is kind of a battle in and itself, because all of them look fantastic. They all look amazing. And I probably took this decision a little bit more serious than I should have, because I'm Italian, in case you couldn't tell. I love Roman everything. So this is also my first Albion. This is my first high-end sword I've ever purchased. So I thought about it a lot, and I went with the Augustus. And that retails for $770 plus 30 shipping, so it was like $825 out the door, something like that. Mm-hmm. So Albion, as you guys probably know, are high-end manufacturers. That's not a little bit of money to spend on a sword. So as such, you expect really good fit and finish. John, how do you think they did?
I think the fit and finish is absolutely amazing on this sword. So as we've talked about in the past, I tend to be a little bit more lenient on fit and finish than Vic does, but I look at this sword and it looks like it could be made with a machine. It's ridiculous. I mean, I'm nary a hammer mark is to be seen. There's no space between the brass inset guard. I think it's brass, right?
It's brass, yeah.
Brass inset guard and the blade. I mean, the wood, I pick it up and it literally feels like machined plastic because it's so well polished. That's not an indication of it's feeling low quality. It's just it feels that smooth and that well done. It looks like it could have been poured in a mold. It's amazing. The fit and finish on this sword is amazing. There's a couple little quirks here and there I would make. There's one spot where maybe you can see a little bit of epoxy through the handle, and then just little things like that, and the sharpness overall, which we'll talk about in handling. But this sword is a precision, and that's what you're paying for, is the precision of its manufacture, and it completely, you get your money's worth on that.
Yeah, so I 1000% agree with you with that. And so that is one, I won't even say criticism, but one thing about Albion to note if you're looking at purchasing some is they really have a machined perfection look to them. Exactly. Not just in the blade, but also in the hilt construction and all that. And like you're right, there will be little scuffs, little hammer marks here or there, possibly. That's with anything. But they don't have a handmade-y look to them by any means. They don't have that kind of rougher medieval aesthetic. All their swords are made to look basically museum perfect. And some people don't like that aesthetic. Some people that looks a little too perfect. I'm a bougie, beep. And so because of that, I love that. And so if I'm paying that much money for a sword, I want it to be as close to perfect as it can possibly get from an aesthetic standpoint, because it's also a piece of art that's going to hang on my wall. And you're right, the fit and finish is as good as I could probably hope for. Like you said, the brass insert and the guard and the fit and that, which, by the way, the brass insert is historically accurate. This whole construction is very historically accurate. It is peened. The peened is buffed over and can't even feel it. It looks amazing. Everything about this is sturdy. The wood feels amazing. It smelled like wood, which I guess, it should, but just out the box, it had an aroma to it that was really interesting. The blade itself has no ripples, no hammer marks. The central ridge, which I honestly thought would be a little bit more pronounced, but it's not. But its straights doesn't waver at all.
Which, again, will make it function better, too, because a more pronounced ridge is less effective for cutting.
Right.
Right.
But as you probably know, the originals were made of irons or softer metal, so they did have a pronounced ridge. Exactly. Yeah. Kind of odd, because it is, compared to something medieval, even a medieval army sword, it's rather small. And
it is. And it absolutely is ridiculous to me how light this sword feels, because I've held Gladi. Is that how you say it?
Gladi.
Gladi. All right, look at that. Damn, that Latin correspondence course. But, yeah. I've held them before, and they tended to be lower end ones and a little bit thicker, a little bit heavier, and they still feel like pretty fun swords to swing around. I mean, I have zero complaints about the lower end Gladi that I've held. This one, I swear to God, you pick it up and it feels like a scalpel in your hand. It has absolutely no weight to it. It's ridiculous. And like you look at it and it's so thin and it just looks like a precision instrument. It's gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, I agree with you. The lower end Gladi that I've held too, like if you just in a vacuum you held that sword, because that one was 2.5 pounds.
Right. Yeah, the one you got off Etsy or whatever. Right?
Yeah, from Ragnarok. And it looked fun. It was a cool backyard chopper. It was fun, but like that's way overweight. That weighs more than even the bigger Gladius Espenensis weight back in the day.
Sword weight, heavy arming sword.
But you wouldn't think it was heavy by picking it up. But I remember when I unboxed this and like we held them both hand in hand, they didn't feel like the same thing.
Kind of, not even the same kind of sword.
No, it's ridiculous. Insane. So the overall lightweight, the distal taper that this has.
Yeah.
That's the thing that gets you with this sword is like you feel like, oh, it is very much made for thrusting.
Right.
The tip is reinforced, which is really cool. But the way it moves and just wants to like sing and dance in your hand is insane how much fun this is to move around.
I completely agree. Like Matt Easton said, I think once that a Gladius is probably the most underrated cutting sword that there is. And I completely tend to agree with that because they do cut really, really well. And yeah, just the handling on this one is just so fast. It doesn't feel like you would expect it to. It's definitely worth holding in your hand. And I think honestly that the aggressive distal taper and the lightness that brings to the feel of the blade and just the precision fit and finish is what you're paying for with this sword.
Yes.
Because you can pay half this for a very decent Gladius, but what you're paying the extra for is that, and it's worth it, I think.
Yeah. I tend to agree. I think this handles like an absolute dream, but that kind of segues into the issue with this sword. And John, what was our issue with it?
It just needs to be sharper.
Yeah.
And now, caveat, neither one of us are expert cutters by any stretch of the imagination. We're going to try to cut in some slow motion stuff so you can see that probably edge alignment is part of the culprit here, because a couple of times I did get some good cuts where it just like sang right through. But in general, I feel like this sword should be sharp enough that I can't grab it inside my hand along the blade, and I can do that with this sword.
And not just that, but you can put pressure too, which you shouldn't be able to do at all.
Right, exactly.
And you're right. And for me personally, I think part of my issue with the cutting too that we noticed was I was going way too high up on the blade. I was standing further back because again, I'm not used to something.
Your arming sword length or longer longsword in length.
Yeah, so I was going way too high on the tip, but. On that, though, you can kind of tell where it wants you to cut right at the leaf kind of like belly right here, there.
Yep, that sweet spot right there. When you get it there, it just through. Even the harder bottles,
Yeah, and you just got to give it a little bit, even with the edge as it is, if you just give it a little bit of force, and if you hit in the sweet spot, you're going to go through water bottles. But we were batting them around. We were kind of tearing them a lot. And it just the edge geometry is really, really good on this.
It just needs to be finer at the very edge. That's all. Exactly. Yeah, it's got a perfect, the geometry is gorgeous.
Right.
It just needs to be sharper.
Real quick, I didn't mention this when we were talking about the look of it. Aesthetically, I think the blade shape is gorgeous. The leaf-shaped blade, this is one of like the last swords, post-antiquity that had that shape in it.
Yep.
And it just looks absolutely gorgeous. Yep. So overall handling, we think it handles like a dream, but the edge just needs to be sharper. But that's a complaint from most manufacturers.
Absolutely.
Including Albion.
You would just sort of hope that with this price point, it would come sharper than this. Yeah. But I can see a lot of reasons why you wouldn't want to ship a razor sharp sword too.
I mean, there's
that.
So much difference there.
Yeah.
So overall, John, and I feel like this is going to be a tricky one for us to talk about. What do you think of this sword, and do you think it's worth it? For me, no. And that's like number one. I like Gladi a lot. I think they're beautiful and wonderful swords. I don't need to spend $1,000 on one. It's just not the sword that I would do that on. Now, Albion makes a beautiful Type 18E Danish sword that I would probably sell people's children for. So, I'm very into Albion stuff, but this is not the sword that I would pay that money for. And in general, Albion leans away from my aesthetic a little bit. It's very, very again, if it's what you like, if you like a beautiful factory-looking, machine-looking sword that is just absolutely perfect, great. I like a little bit of rough edge. I like it looking like maybe it was used or banged out real quick in an arming campaign or something. That's what I like about swords. So no, for me, it's not worth the money. And that very fair point. And I'm actually, we didn't discuss this at all beforehand. I'm actually really happy you went there because it is 100% worth it for me. And so this will reflect, though, in my value score. That's a tricky thing to talk about because, is it worth it for me personally? Yeah. Yes, and then some. Yes. Is it a good value? So before you light me up in the comments, or both of us, know that by value, we're not saying, is it worth it? Our value score means for the money, like bang for the buck, essentially. Right. And that's dependent on what you value. Right. It just depends on what you value. And so for me personally, I love Roman everything. I love Roman. The Gladius is probably my second favorite sword type, and like it's the first high-end sword that I ever bought for a reason. I wanted a perfect example of it, and I like the Albion aesthetic. I'm the prissy one, and so to me, worth it, 1000% worth it. But it depends on your taste, as you said, and Albion has an array of swords, and if this isn't up your alley, maybe the Principe is, or the Mercenary, or any of their 24 models. You know what I mean?
Right. And again, for me, it's not even necessarily. It's just that I like what you're paying the money for, which is immaculate fit and finish. Which again, I think you're getting every cent of your money's worth on this. I mean, we'll do some close-up shots. You'll see it's gorgeous, but it's just, is that worth the money to you? And that's where you have to make your own decision. Right. To me, it isn't, because I'm not into that, but for some people, it would be. Right. And that's fine.
And even still, like if you are going high-end money for medieval swords, someone like Arms and Armor has handling that is on par, but their aesthetic is a little more rougher. It's a little more medieval.
A third less price. Exactly.
Well, comparable. A little less, but about comparable. Yeah. But for me, I wouldn't spend $900 on one of their swords for their aesthetic, despite the handling being good. I would go with an Albion equivalent. Exactly. I would spend $200 more and get an Albion. So it's really just what works for you.
What works for you? What's important to you? Exactly.
But yeah, overall, so I probably can figure out. I say buy. I think it's worth it if this is your type of sword and that's what you want to spend the money on. So,
and I would say buy it if you have that money to throw at it, because holding that sword in your hand is an experience worth having. There's just no doubt about that. So, but if it's going to be this or 3 other swords that you might enjoy more, get the 3 other swords for me. Right. But it's worth it if you could like go to the Albion store and hold one of these and just have a happy experience. I would say do it.
How much do you wish there was an Albion store?
Well, Combat Con, we're gonna go.
Yeah, that's gonna be fun.
We're gonna find all the Albion swords.
I'm gonna take my credit card on it. All right, so that's pretty much everything I have to say about this. John, anything else?
Again, just beautiful sword. Handle's great. Needs to be a little sharper.
Yeah, fair enough. I think that about sums it up. Yeah. And hey, thank you for watching this video. If you've enjoyed, hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, really helps with the algorithm. Comment in the comments and let us know what you think of this sword, if Albion in general and this specific model is something you think is worth the money. And hey, let us know about our cutting form.
You can tell us how it's all our fault and we'll believe you.
Totally will. We'll be so nice about it too.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, anything else?
Nope, that's all.
All right, thanks for watching, guys.
Peace.